Hi, and welcome to Haunted AF, the podcast of real ghost stories told by real people. We are your hosts. I'm Julie Fisk.
And I'm Rebecca Black, and welcome to another surprise episode.
Woo! Surprise! Yeah, we were really excited because we got to talk to Stephen Belyeu from the Night Owl podcast out of Austin. And we thought about waiting until October to share it, but we couldn't. So here you go.
Yep.
So we have Stephen Belyeu from the Night Owl podcast with us. First of all, we've got a whole list of questions before I goon out.
She had to write them down because she's such a fangirl right now.
I am. Why don't you just give everybody a little overview of what your podcast is all about?
Yeah, so the Night Owl is something that I sort of spawned because I've always been fascinated with ghost stories. My background is in storytelling and filmmaking, screenwriting, but I really like more believable and very approachable stories that are less fabricated or less enhanced with music or trying to scare people. And every time I tuned into a ghost story podcast back when I started this show, which was 2017, they were all a little hokey, just to be honest. Mm-hmm. And I wanted something I could appreciate, that this person was really trying to capture the ghost stories from people that had them themselves. And at that time, the only podcasts available were people reading ghost stories from emails. So it was like a host narrating these stories. So I had kind of just started to begin the process of saying, no, I want to capture voices, and I don't ever want to share a story myself. I want these to be from the mouths of those who experience them. So the show is basically a more journalistic approach to gathering and retelling ghost stories, but it's also unique in the sense that it's investigative. So it's not just we're retelling the ghost stories. We tell the ghost stories that have happened at a location, but then we take steps to research it and then bring in investigators, psychics, mediums, and kind of go the whole 9 yards with it to just kind of cover all the bases and see what we finally think about this location. Do these ghost stories actually hold any truth, or what do y'all take away from this episode, or this series?
So you're kind of like a modern day Ed and Lorraine Warren, or would you be really offended if I said that?
I would be honored in a way, although some of the stuff has been sort of questionable if whether it's been truthful or not. But I grew up inspired by them, so I'm honored in that reference for sure. Because I wouldn't have done what I've done had I not kind of seen what they were trying to do, or at least what they put out. I don't know if it was all truth or accurate. That's something I'm going to probably investigate when I become a little bit more veteran at this position. But they were a huge inspiration to me, so I take that as a compliment for right now.
Did they inspire? Because didn't you start a paranormal group way back when? Did they inspire you to do that?
Yeah, it was a lot of people that inspired it. My team member Alexis, who's on the team, he was the person who introduced me to Ed and Lorraine Warren. As far as their personalities and their book, we watched shows religiously. We read their stuff. And there were some other shows that really inspired us to kind of put our skills together, because we felt we both had that same approach. We wanted to believe, but we weren't going to take it as a very gullible approach. I guess we were all just on the same page. We weren't trying to catch anything. And I think that's something that we like to point out in the show. We're not trying to capture ghosts with equipment or gear or try to find the evidence. It's more like we're gathering the stories, we're gathering the history, we're gathering the unique corroborations between stories. And we're just presenting it and saying, look, this place is pretty interesting, all this stuff that's happened. But we're not waiting in a dark room at night with gear or cameras rolling to catch a ghost. That's not what we're trying to do. So we kind of like the fact that we were going to document that process with our team mentality.
Have you ever had a situation where someone contacts you and you go to their place and you find a reason for the activity that's not paranormal?
With our particular style of approaches, we really don't take a case unless we vet them before we go, because we want to make sure that we're going to a place that has significant amount of reports, and the reports have layers. We have categories for the activity. I'm is there multiple eyewitnesses? If they're not, I'm not going to go. If there's been physical sightings, that's a huge plus for us. And if it's multiple physical sightings on different occasions, it's all those kind of tiers that we go down. And once it's hit sort of enough marks, we're this warrants enough time for us to go do this, because we do get a lot of requests and the show is really difficult to produce. I talk about it a lot and I feel bad that I'm saying it all the time, but no one has an idea of how much it takes to just do one series. And I have to release them once a month, which upsets listeners because they like to binge, like you talked about. But it's there's no way to do it. If I didn't have a full-time job and this was it, I could definitely see trying to get out maybe 2 a month. It could never be a weekly thing. It's just so much research time. We just went to the House of Torment this week again. If you think about it, we were there a year ago, but we are getting calls saying something's stirring up. We've seen something here. So I pick up my stuff when we go, and we are going to include that, So it's like, it's an ongoing process of documenting these cases to the fullest extent that we can. And we don't ever want to just cut it short and be like, oh, we're just going to like go there once and then we're going to wrap it up and we'll have an episode in 1 week, guys. It's like, we're there for a year. And so, yeah, we haven't had that experience where we've gone and there's not been really anything yet. There's been a couple cases we didn't release because it was just a little bit too little of a story to share. I mean, it's fun and it's interesting. I don't want to downplay someone's haunting, but like, it wouldn't make for a good epic story to put on the series.
I'm sure you've had your fair share of like fakers or whatever, but have you gotten real far in, like where you've started investigating and stuff like that and you found them out to be like a phony or anything like that?
Nothing yet. It happens way before we even go, like that. Even when we were early on, we would have like a submission form. So this was even before the show, and we just had our small group called the Occult Sciences Societies. So we do a lot of vetting like that. And that's why we have the submission form online, and it's got really good questions and fill in the blanks.
And so that's how people, if someone is having activity and they want to reach out to you, they would do it through the online form?
Yeah, it's an online submission form, and you can submit whether it's just like, I own a location that's haunted. I have my own personal story that might be interesting for what's called our campfire episodes, which we're going to start coming back with those soon.
Do you ever have people reach out and ask for your help and say, I don't want to be a part of the podcast, I just want help?
Sadly, I'd love to, but it's just not feasible with the time that we have. So I have like Alexis and everybody that we have resources. We will work with them to either work with someone we know directly, like Alexis and or Sarah or somebody, or they will recommend somebody that they reach out to that has a little bit more time. So we always help in some way, shape, or form and get them a contact of some sort if we can't help them directly.
You talked about earlier how you're never the one to tell a story or a personal story. So this is where we always ask, do you actually have your very own personal ghost story? And if so, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, I was about 9 years old. I'm an only child, grew up in a small town in called Pawnee, Texas. And when I say small, I mean really small. Population's 200. It's still 200 to this day. Ooh. My graduating class was 14 kids.
Wow.
Really small.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Nothing, not even a restaurant, not even a store, not even a gas station. My mom and dad had secretly been saving and working hard to build a new home because we were living on our grandparents' property, just kind of like in a small trailer house type thing. And my dad built a brand new 2-story home. It was on this big, huge 12-acre lot. It's the home that they have to this day. I grew up in that home from 9 on. It was a brand new house on a empty vacant lot. Not even a tree was on this 12 acres. We had to plant everything there to grow, and now it's grown, but it was just like desolate. And at the time I hadn't really gotten into ghosts or ghost stories. Dad surprised me. He custom built this upstairs space for me. It was like my bedroom and a spare room, and he built this like nook window that popped out, looked out over the open fields, and it had a window, and that was my drawing desk. So it was all cool. Should be happy, right? I just wasn't. I wasn't happy. Something was like watching me upstairs, and I could feel it as soon as we moved in, and it just kind of got worse and worse. There were so many little things that were like part of it. I'll save it so listeners and you can hear the full story on the episode, Origins 1 and Origins Part 2. But long story short, it all culminated to one night where this thing actually physically showed itself to me when I was sleeping. I realized it had haunted me to this day, even as an adult. So I was around 10 or 11 when she physically appeared by my bedside and really scared me with the way she looked and things like that. But obviously, I'm working with a psychic, Sarah. I had only shared that story with Alexis and a handful of people. Did not share that story with Sarah. One day on a case, she pulled me aside and she just basically said, there's been something that's, since we started working together, that I've been seeing. And I thought it was at the first location, which was like Spider House. I thought it was then the tavern. She goes, but now it's at the clay pit. The only factor that I'm seeing that's connecting is it's got to be connected to you. And the reason why I know it's you is that now this thing is showing up at my house and it points at my phone when I have a missed call from you.
What?
I'm telling you, it's exactly to a T. She describes what walked up to my bedside that night. And she goes, it's still with you. It hasn't left you and it wants you to see it. And I documented that over the course of a long period of time because I was busy on cases. I was like, I didn't want to feature my own story. Sure. So I gathered all that data and we traveled to my hometown, my parents' home, my old bedroom, and we take Sarah and we face what I faced when I was a kid and what terrified me, like, to this day. So it was pretty cool to go after my own haunting. After I'd already chased other people's ghosts, I was now chasing my own that haunted me from my childhood.
Well, that is something I wanted to ask you. Does any of this scare you anymore after encountering it and working with it so much? Does it scare you?
I will lie if I say if it doesn't, but also it's so much better now. In the show, you'll hear me. I'm crawling under crawl spaces under houses because the spirit is there crawling and calling me under, and I go after it. You know what I mean? Because they're asking me to find something. But I think with the show, I'm learning, and that's the whole point. I wanted to do the show was to learn about that world. And when you learn about something, you're not so afraid of it anymore because it's not a mystery. Every time we go on a case, the majority of the time, there's a few exceptions, they're just needing something. They're just lost. They're just angry at the fact that they can't get their message across. They've got something missing or something happened to them that they need to get across. So when I'm doing this, I'm actually driven to like keep going and like go into these places that people might not go into because they're uncomfortable. It's just being like, well, somebody's got to get their story out, and I'm the one that can fit through this little tiny door. So I'm going to go do it. Yeah.
I wonder if that somehow helps them move on by you going to visit, you telling the story on the podcast, that somehow sets them free in a way.
It's that classic tale of unfinished business with ghosts.
Yeah.
That might be fictional. It might be made up because of literature and movies on ghosts, but I'm finding a very true nature to that because of what happens and unfolds at these cases. And it would be one thing if it was all just a medium spouting out stuff and we're just jumping through the hoops because they say to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the stuff they're spouting out is lining up with the records and the sightings, and they are blindfolded when they go there. They don't know where they're going. So that is the level of like validation that I'm seeking. And I really don't want to feature stories that don't have that.
Every story that we hear, we're constantly changing our minds on exactly what we think a ghost is. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are. What do you think a ghost is?
I most believe in the lingering presence of someone's soul, of something that's been left behind, whether that be by choice of like their energy is tied to a place because of love and joy and memories, and they want to visit that place occasionally. They may not be there all the time. I've learned that. But there's a lot of instances where some people seem stuck, and there's reasons behind that based on the research we've been doing with psychic mediums, and then just matching that with the stories and the testimony and historical records. And like, okay, this did happen here. It was covered up. It's creepy. Like maybe this spirit is trapped here because they are lost because their death was traumatic, or, something like that. So the answer is, I believe in the most common form of ghost. However, there's a lot of other types of apparitions and spiritual beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I truly believe in all those yet. We had gnomes in one of our last episodes, which I was like, what are you talking about, Sarah? Like,
we've had gnomes.
We've had gnomes, but I will say, because I was all in about the Vision Center, and I wanted to ask you about that one too. It's like, it's a haunted Vision Center. Do people drop by there now just to check it out? Because I know Rebecca and I both wanted to. They're like, we're heading to Dripping Springs. I want to check this out.
Dude, Dr. Dobson and Desiree, they would love it. They really loved us, and they were like super supportive. It's really great when you find a location like that. If you go back, like our first seasons were all businesses. I think our later seasons people started reaching out because they were having problems, because we began the show with featuring mostly businesses, tattoo shops, bars, restaurants. I like it when we get places like an optometrist or a vision center. You know what I mean? Like, you don't think of a modern day vision center being a haunted building.
No.
We even did like a cupcake bakery here in Austin that never made it as a series, but it was really fun. The last thing you do is go to that place thinking you're going to experience something paranormal. But Dr. Dobson and them would welcome y'all to walk in and just look at the place.
What would you say to someone like me who does not believe in psychics?
I totally say don't believe in psychics. Until they prove their validity to you. If you ever met Sarah, I would doubt her the moment you met her. I wouldn't say trust her until she proves it to you that she's got the gift for you. She's proven it for me, and there's no doubt in my mind that she has it. Like, I've gotten it because I've been there and I've witnessed it.
I want to have that kind of experience with a psychic.
So do I.
Have you had an experience when you're doing an investigation? Have you had something like happen to you?
Yeah, a lot of it is like way smaller than what you would imagine or hope for, right? Like, I think the movies really
they've ruined us.
Yeah,
that is so true.
there's that photograph from the tavern that really shook me. It's a shadow figure of a male, and he was standing where I was just standing moments before. I did everything to debunk that thing, and I even brought in my team member Franklin, who's really good at that. He analyzes photos. He was dumbfounded by that photo. The other thing that happened to me was at the clay pit, a door swung open, and it's like a swinging kitchen door, but no one was in the building, and there was no air conditioning or heaters on, so there was no airflow. And we went and opened all the doors and shut them real hard, like just to see if there would be suction from anywhere in the building, and nothing. And then it did it again as soon as we stopped messing with things. And I was like, okay. And it was right when we were having conversations with the spirit that didn't like me named Dowdy. The tavern is really a hard one for me, because that was like a case that didn't have a lot of answers, but Sarah got a lot of really cool information that made us believe we might have found who actually committed this supposed murder of the child there, which was really, really traumatizing to hear that story for the first time. I didn't know that was what happened there. When I was doing that case, there was a man whispering in my ear at night here at this house before I went to bed every night. He supposedly was a politician who frequented this secret brothel in Austin, which was above a grocery store. And that's where the tavern is now. This politician apparently started liking this madam, or this main sex worker there, and she had a daughter that she had to keep at work in her own little room, and it was by the stairs that led to the attic. Like, it was getting a little bit too personal, and she didn't want him coming by anymore. There was also rumors that he got aggressive or abusive, and she told him he couldn't come to the brothel anymore. Apparently, when he left, he was so angered by this woman denying him that he took her daughter up the attic and raped and murdered her, and stuffed her in the wall. Sarah and I did research online after she had gone there, and we were looking for this person, and we found someone, and it was crazy how he matched how she described him when we were there. As soon as we started doing more digging there, that's when I started hearing at night, just as I was going to bed, I would just hear Steven, like that, right in my ear.
So wait, are you doing anything to like protect yourself before you go, or like when you're leaving?
Yeah, that was early on. And I hadn't been. I've since become very versed at like in my own spiritual practices. I wear things, I'm all doing things.
Tourmaline bracelet.
Yeah, this is obsidian. I do have tourmaline in here.
Okay.
I have Saint Michael that's been blessed by Alexis and his team. So those are the experiences that I've had as far as like just spiritual. I've seen things at Pioneer Farms, which has been really cool, but those have been awesome. We got a really cool photograph there too by our tour photographer. I wasn't there that night, and she took a picture and like she sent it to me immediately and goes, "What the heck is this?"
So if someone was just starting the podcast, which episodes would you tell them to go with?
I always say go back to one, because it's a chronological like journey of us learning what we're doing, because we just start off by accident creating episode 1. We bring Sarah just by chance. And then from there, it like kind of spawned our team, and we just start doing new cases, and we reference old cases in new ones. If you don't really know the other ones, you might not get the references.
Okay. And also, you were saying how hard it is to make your podcast, and like you've got a full-time job, you've got a whole team. If people want to help you out, to help you with your work, what can they do?
If you like the show, we have a Patreon page, and the Patreon page is where you make like a monthly contribution, and you get bonus features like behind the scenes audio. We do like walkthroughs of the place so you can see videos of them, and that's only $1 a month. We have it really low right now. That's where the most support comes from. We have a huge Patreon support page, and that's patreon.com/the Night Owl Podcast.
And your website. So if people want to reach out, if they're having activity and they want to get the show over there, what is the website again?
thenightowlpodcast.com.
Easy peasy.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So can we come on an investigation or something if we promise to be quiet?
Yeah. I'll see. We don't have any. Well, I have several right now, but they're kind of midway through, so I'm wrapping them up.
Okay.
But if we get some new ones, I'll let you know. Yeah.
Can you give us some highlights on what you're working on right now?
We've got another tattoo shop, and we've got a personal case that we're wrapping up. So it's like a private residence. Yeah.
And don't forget, we're still posting mini-sodes at patreon.com/hauntedaf. It's only $5 a month. You get exclusive content. And of course, it helps the podcast stay afloat.
Yeah. And another way you can support us is check out the merch at hauntedaf.com. We've got great t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, mugs, all kinds of fun stuff. And that does help us keep doing what we're doing. So remember, Haunted AF is returning for the month of October. Woo-woo. That means we need your story. So, you know, the one about the weird cat person under your bed, or that disembodied foot, maybe the time you thought you were haunted, but you just had a squatter in your attic. Send all that stuff to hauntedafpodcast@gmail.com so we can use them this October on Haunted AF.